Welcome back to Anchored in the Word podcast. We are on episode 2 in our series, The Gift of Marriage. Well, we just want to welcome you here today to Calvary Chapel Coastlands. We're in studio, and I'm Pastor Bill Beckelman. I got my lovely wife Candace next to me.
Hello.
And it's just not Candace and myself that are here today.
Yeah.
We have a couple from our church here today, and we're excited to meet with them. You're going to hear their stories today. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if there's any more of a diverse marriage, of any marriage I've ever known, than these two. As I was reading their testimonies, I'm thinking, wow, this is diversity.
So let's say hi to Jonathan and Savani.
Hello, how are you?
Hello.
But we're just so happy to have them in studio today, and we want to hear their story.
And in light of what you said about diversity, I kind of could see like a banner over their life, like what a great story of God's providence.
Yes, I was thinking it through and
Connecting dots.
With diversity, and we'll learn about that. There is adversity, and that's marriage, isn't it? Marriage.
Yeah.
Did you want to say something, Savani? You look like you're chomping at the bit there.
Well, I think to paint a picture of diversity for everyone, I am Asian, Cambodian, and Jonathan, he's Caucasian.
Joycey, he's from the Joycey Shore.
That's right.
That was only part of it, believe me.
Probably, right? Yeah.
But so here we are. And now, how long have you two been married?
We're coming up on 8 years in September.
I love their testimony.
In some ways, that doesn't seem very long to me. I mean, knowing how much we've known you and seeing how much God has done in your lives, wow, but 8 years. All right, well, congratulations. It's good. 8 years.
So does that mean how long have you been in the coastlands?
Basically,
8 years? Or?
Basically, a little less than 8 years. We came here in December of 2012, probably November, maybe. Yeah, we got married in September, and we started coming. And when you moved in, and after we were married, and that was right in the middle of the winter. Yep. Huh.
So at that time, you
2013.
moved then from Pennsylvania to New Jersey?
Yes, we were not living together under the same roof.
Yeah, but you
married.
came from Pennsylvania, right?
Yes, Pennsylvania.
Whole different world in New Jersey, right?
Correct, yes.
Now, you grew up in New Jersey, right?
That's right here.
Yeah,
In
yeah.
Holmdel. Yep.
So, yeah, I moved from California, so I know it was like a whole different culture. Again, for you, you've gone to a couple of different cultures that we'll talk about.
So one of the things that, you wonder, how do people, because I look at Candace and myself, and we're almost like bookends. We're on opposite ends of the spectrum, but you guys take the cake, though. You're farther on the ends of the spectrum, I think, than we are. But one of the things that God has to do in that to bring you two together is there needs to be some common ground, at least in the meeting. And as I was reading about when you guys first met, I want to touch on that as we start, because this is an event that took place in America that changed us forever in a lot of ways as a nation. Mm-hmm. And you guys have that in common. And I see that as part of the thread that God used to so tell us a little bit about what you were doing on September 11, 2001.
I was working in New York City in Tower 1. And that's where I was, and I was working in the city for about 3 years down in World Trade Center. So I didn't know anything about New York City. I just left home because I wanted diversity.
So there's another culture that
Yes,
you've adapted to.
Came from a very small town. Not a lot of diversity. We were Asian, the only Asian family probably in the county then. So I moved to New York City, so I was working in Tower 1 on September 11th.
But now you two didn't know each other then.
No.
You both worked there, but didn't know each other yet.
Yeah, when we met, within the first few minutes of us talking, we both realized that we were there that day on 9/11, and we related our stories. And so
what did you do there?
Well, I worked for Fidelity Investments. I worked on the building 1 of the World Financial Center. I was on the 26th floor as the first plane hit the North Tower, and I looked up when I was at my desk, and I saw the smoldering and broken windows of the south side of the North Tower, just a ball of smoke and falling glass. And I said to my coworker, I used an expletive, I wasn't a Christian. And I told my coworker Kizzy, I said the World Trade Center's on fire. And we watched and saw the glass falling off, from that distance. And in the shock of it all, I thought to myself, well, that's really dangerous. That glass could hit somebody on the ground, just couldn't, in disbelief seeing
Right.
like that.
Yeah.
And so, yeah. And,
Must have been surreal.
yeah, it was a pretty.
But didn't you not go to work that day or something? What was your story?
Tell your story.
So I'm pretty prompt. I was late that morning. My train came in and I was muddling to myself that I was late. So I was already half an hour late and the first plane had already hit. So I was going into work. Again, this was the beginning of God's plan, and I didn't know it until now. And it's interesting how he's weaving our conversation today, because we're coming up on the anniversary of 9/11 in a few weeks. So I was working and I was late. And I was there for the second plane when it hit.
Coming
And
up from the subway, right?
coming out from the subway.
You were walking to the elevator.
Yeah, and the plane was underneath me, and it crashed into my building.
So he's just
South
plucked
Tower.
you out of the fire, as they say. Both
Yeah.
of you.
So were you actually in the tower then, you said?
I was in the first tower walking because underneath is the concourse.
So you were coming out of the subway, go into the elevator, and as you
Right.
were going to go into the elevator, someone was coming down and said, "Do not go in the elevator. Something has happened." Right?
Yeah, something's happening. Don't go in. Turn around. Go to the nearest exit. But when you're a New Yorker, I'm not a true New Yorker, but I've desensitized myself to not to listen to anything.
Yeah.
Right. So, Jonathan, now you weren't in one of the towers per se,
I was
right?
across the street, in the World
It's
Financial Center, right across the West Side Highway,
Gotcha.
witnessing it all. So when the second plane came in that hit the South Tower, so she's trying to go into the South Tower,
Right.
and she's realizing that there's something wrong. And then the second, as she's trying to go into the South Tower, the plane hits.
Right.
And I'm on the 26th floor across the street, and the fireball, when you watch that video, that fireball that spits out, that's just massive, that was like sort of like eye level. That was like, it felt like it was kissing the window I was in, like right across the
Right.
street. It was so huge. And that instinct was just immediate to leave the building. Like everybody, and we had watched the horror of the people making those fateful choices to jump out of the windows.
Oh, you
from
had
the-
to see, you watched that?
We watched some of that, and it's just you can't imagine, that seeing, like the one guy I remember seeing falling and just watching his tie fluttering.
Right.
It's just
That's
it's horrific.
that's a memory that you'll always
You'll never
Right.
never leave you. But there was more people going out of the north side of the North Tower, but it was horrendous. Yeah.
So, when the first plane hit, you didn't know it was a plane, obviously. You thought it was like an explosion or something?
No, we figured it because the radio. Someone had the radio on,
Oh.
and someone had said it might have been a plane, and
Okay.
we didn't know for sure because
Right,
I didn't see it.
but it could have been a
But
plane crash.
But
I
when,
mean-
when I first heard it, I heard it first, and I thought, "Oh, well, there's a bus crash down
Right,
there."
right.
And then when I felt the ground shake, I'm like, "No, that's how does the ground shake from a bus crash?"
Right.
And then 15 minutes goes by, and then the other one comes in, and you heard the sound. And for actually a couple of years afterward, anytime I heard that sound of a low plane, it just brings you back. Not like I was like overwhelmed,
bet it worked your
but
body,
it
right?
just makes you look, makes you.
So when you saw the second explosion, you knew then that something,
There's
it wasn't just an accident. There was something going on.
war, it was like just war,
Right.
Something,
Yeah.
Right. And
Now,
so
how about you then, Savani? Like when he was at that point, were you still desensitized, or were you kind of getting it, or?
I was shocked because as he's seeing the bodies fly, I'm hearing it. So he's visually seeing it, I'm hearing, because you don't see the buildings that are below the tall buildings. So as I'm walking into the concourse of the first tower. You hear, and nobody knows what's going on, but then they realize. So, to answer your question, I was shocked. I didn't know what to do. I just looked
Were there
up.
just like a lot of people frozen?
They were standing there, and that's when it's like a movie scene where you're just, what's happening, what's going on, and you knew something bad was happening, and that was only confirmed when the second plane came, and that's when it confirmed for anybody who was standing on the ground that there was a plane that hit the first building.
Right.
So that's.
So wow, what a story! Just to hear you guys tell it, wow, it just kind of takes you back. You hear a lot about the people that were killed, and there were over 3,000 people. It's unbelievable, but there were really more that survived, if you think about it, right? And we don't necessarily hear a lot about the survivors necessarily, but that particular day, looking back, you'd have to now know, being in Christ, that was God that allowed you to be late for work that day, and held you back. And we heard so many stories like that people that were supposed to be there at that particular point in time weren't there for different reasons. And so we see the sovereign hand of God in preserving you, because he had a plan for you beyond that day. He had a plan for you, right? And here it is. We're sitting here. 10
And
isn't
it
how many
like-
years has it been now? Since 9/11, it's been 17, 18 years? No, 20 years.
20 years.
20 years.
Yeah, come on,
19.
Martin.
It'll be 19, I guess, this year.
Yeah, 19, yeah.
Wow, it's amazing.
Yeah. So no wonder they had much to talk about when they met.
Yeah,
Right.
right away in the first couple of minutes of
Yeah,
talking.
that's
Do you
what
remember
God
how it
uses.
came up?
Well, we met in Spring Lake on the 4th of July, 2010, at the beach in the water, literally. I mean, as just amazing. She doesn't swim.
Jonathan,
Yeah, she's
another about opposite.
And I'm
He
a
doesn't
surfer.
swim, he's a surfer.
And I've surfed my whole life since it's like so small, and it was super hot, super shallow, low tide. So she was in the water. It was comfortable for no big waves, and yeah, I saw her, and I'm like, I need to talk to her, and I just I said,
Just to
said
mention
anything.
that she's very beautiful.
Yes, right. So I made sure to just say anything, and
Oh, how about those seagulls?
yeah, it's the only way to stay cool today is what I said, and then we just made the segue, and where are you from, and then and then we figured out that we both used to work in the city, and then it was quickly onto that we're both there on 9/11,
Right.
Yeah.
and then that was sort of for me, I felt connected to her.
Sure.
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
And I don't
God's
know.
such a practical God to do what he's doing. It's a beautiful story of grace. Everybody has a story, and it's a grace story.
Yes.
And so they've gone through, young adults thinking they've got things going. I mean, when you've, at least the stigma is once you've kind of gone to New York and you're in the city and you're doing business, you're kind of like living the dream in what the world would say, which wound up being quite a nightmare, and you realize it's not quite the dream you thought it was after 9/11. But
sure.
so then fast forward, you're at the beach, 4th of July, and they made a connection, and they probably found out a lot of things about themselves that was not only so different, but just, again, God's providential hand on them. Because like you said, the diversity is one came from one whole other side of the world, right?
Yeah. So that was the first meeting. I love to hear first meetings where we
Yeah.
first met. Again, we talked about diversity, that being different. Opposites are very different. Now, Savani, tell us a little bit about your story about, growing up and where you grew up and how you came to come to America.
So my story is that I am an immigrant. I survived the Holocaust, specifically the Cambodian Holocaust. So I'm from Cambodia, and my family and I immigrated to the United States in 1980. So I grew up with very little. And because we came from nothing, everything that we experience is big. So, for example, food was a big deal when we lived in Cambodia. We had plenty, but when the Holocaust happened, I didn't live
Pol Pot,
in
yeah.
Pol Pot's. Thank you, honey.
Communist genocide through Pol Pot, the
Yes.
Khmer Rouge, right?
So Jonathan is
Just to pause
Yeah,
here, one of the neat things, like Jonathan's a history buff, and so he really started digging into this. We can talk about that in a
Yeah.
bit too, to the point of writing out the family history.
Right.
So I think he may know more about some of these names than she does. She was
I
like
do, yeah.
3 years old, right?
That's exactly right. I, for some reason, even after we emigrated out of Cambodia, so back to the story. So I didn't grow up in Cambodia. I was more of like a transient person there, for lack of description. I was born and then the war started. I'm not concrete in my timeline because I personally don't care about it even as an adult, because I guess it is traumatizing. And Jonathan is, I think the Lord put that on his heart to just fill himself out with so much knowledge about the Holocaust, more than I would ever care to know. He would sit there and tell me stories, and I'm like, okay, let's move on. But it's important. But I think because that God is going to use that someday to share with my children. I know that that's the plan, because I really don't know a lot about it other than that I'm, grateful that I'm alive.
So
Well, you were very-
about 3, right?
You were
Yeah.
very young at that
Yes.
time.
Yeah, there was a civil war, and the communists won. The Khmer Rouge took over the country, and it was they enslaved the entire country.
What year was that, John?
It was 1975, April 17th, and they evacuated the entire city of Phnom Penh, where her family lived and were business people. And then one day, the entire city of 3 million people were evacuated into the countryside and split up into work groups and enslaved for 3 years, 8 months, and 20 days. And her
And
family,
his family,
her
your
family
parents
were
went through
enslaved.
that, right?
They were enslaved like everyone
Dad
else.
was in prison for a time.
Well, no, they did took him away, and most of the time when you're taken away by the Khmer Rouge at night, you don't come back. But he was able to come back twice. They took him away. It's unbelievable. So they endured that starvation and enslavement like the whole country did, and there was a million and 700,000 that died through starvation, torture, murder, disease, and.
And that's why she
in
says the
3
word
years.
Holocaust. And when you hear Holocaust, you think of course, Adolf Hitler and the Jews
Yeah.
That's
that
why it's
died.
good use.
And that's why it's good that because
This is Pol Pot, the communist Khmer Rouge. Yeah.
there have been other things that have happened in time when people have been murdered and killed under terrible regimes.
So there's another time where you can see the providential hand of God in Savani's life, plucking her out of that country and bringing her over here.
So in looking back, if I were to connect the dots and learn the stories through my parents, and again, Jonathan's boldness to ask my parents to tell him the story of, how they survived and, what you went through. And my dad, who does not talk a lot, began in the past 3 years, started opening up to Jonathan and being very comfortable sharing the details of the Holocaust, which I never asked about. There's this one story that I still think about God having a hand in it. So after the regime ended, the Red Cross, it was the Swiss,
It was Swiss people that were
Swiss,
working in the
yeah.
Red Cross. Yeah.
and we were invited to go on the truck.
Yeah, because they walked from where they were in Battambang, and they made it back to Phnom Penh to check out the store that they used to have, a jewelry store. Because in their father's wisdom, when the Civil War was happening, they converted their department store in the city to a jewelry store because of the currency collapse and the soldiers stealing all their goods. And it was very wise to bring all those goods make it gold. And so they had stored some gold and took some with them, and that gold enabled them, along the way. But they after Pol Pot ended, they walked to Thailand, like so many refugees, almost a million refugees walked to Thailand, and their father had an axe, as defense as they walked for 2 weeks starving to Thailand, and when the Red Cross person invited them onto the bus to go to the refugee camp, the story was
We were just
he ref-
lifted out.
he ref-
We were just lifted out from just having to wait our turn. How did that happen?
and he refused to let go of that axe
He did,
too.
despite he had a sharp axe, but we were our entire. I mean, there was 5 of us. So we got on the truck and we were taken to a refugee camp where everybody else was standing in line waiting for somebody to take them to the refugee camp.
Wow.
So looking back, you can see God's hand was in that, and we had no idea. So despite us,
That was Kawi Dong.
Yeah.
It was the one of few refugee camps that allowed repatriation to a third country, and so it was a real blessing to make it to Kawi Dong. So they.
Now, what was the god that they served in Cambodia?
Buddhism.
Buddhism.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's like God took you out of that, and you could even, like you said, looking back, see God's hand on it.
We have definitely seen our God's providential hand on their lives. They have a recommended book for us to read. It's called On Marriage and Family Life. And this is an old one. It was written in 345 to 407 on family life by a preacher, John Chrysostom. His advice has timeless relevance for the Christian family. So pick up this book on marriage and family life by John Chrysostom. What I want to do is, since we've been talking about diversity, and we've heard a little bit about how your beginnings, how about you?
Yeah.
So yeah, we'll switch the gears here. So I grew up right here in Monmouth County in the beach area of the Jersey Shore, people call it. We don't live at the beach, and I grew up in.
learned that
I didn't
when we
grow up on the
first
beach. I
moved
grew up in Homedale, which is nearby, and so my dad was a salesman. My mom was a teacher. My mom loved the beach. She had gone to the University of Miami. She was a real beach person. And if it wasn't raining in the summer, we were at the beach, or we had, or maybe we did some sailing. So we would either be at the beach, or we were sailing, or we were into horses. So that was like
Quite a
those are my
leisurely
horror.
life.
Those are my horror stories,
Did you
right?
belong to the beach club scene? Were you part of the
Yeah,
beach
we
club
we
scene?
went to the beach club. We belonged to which is now Chapel Hill, and so I learned to surf. From before I had a real board, I was standing up on those foam boards. When I
Right.
was 7 or 8.
Right. So
I
you were
could
living
stand
a
up,
life on
yeah.
the Jersey Shore,
Oh,
right?
yeah,
Yeah.
there's and then fast forward, my parents did get divorced, so adversity came in, and
Yeah.
that and
That-
at
that
15, so
shatters.
that was like I'll never forget when my mom told me that day that Dad's not coming home tonight, and it was like you couldn't have predicted because on the
You
surface,
never saw it coming.
Then you never saw. They were best friends. They loved to antique. We used to go out to horse shows and all this fun stuff, right? We had this fun lifestyle and whatever. And it was just all ended one day.
And
It
how
was
old were
all
you?
15.
You were
15, yeah.
15.
So I did, I was already partying and
Right.
that stuff, smoking pot and drinking and before that, but then it changed, and
That
Right.
probably
it
just
got worse,
threw yourself
Now-
into that.
Now,
It's a
your parents
broken-
weren't walking with the Lord, is that
No, yeah, they didn't. It was like CIO, Church and Christmas Only, however you say that. CEO, yeah, not more than a little bit more than that. But nobody had any real faith. There was no
Yeah.
belief that I.
So how was it? I'm just curious, Jonathan. How was it presented to you as a 15-year-old that Dad wasn't coming home? Just like that?
Just like that, my mom, she was more, she wasn't cavalier about it. She just said, Dad's not coming home tonight, and it was it's about money and it's about trust and it's about these things like that, and there was things that figured in with me about that, and as far as so it was like. Complicated for a kid,
Right.
and
Yeah.
all I knew is that I was mad at my dad,
Right,
and I got over that. But
right. So diverse backgrounds, I would say.
Yeah.
Raised in a different way. one going through wars and you know. And
But you
just-
know, heartache is heartache
Yeah,
too,
and-
though.
right,
And I think
no.
about how, when I think about Jonathan and where he went from that place on, 15 on, it reminded me of in Ecclesiastes where the Bible says that God has placed eternity in our heart. And it's almost like you went for a search. You were just searching. I mean, you were, you just sort of took off from there, didn't you?
Yeah, I remember feeling like needing to control my drinking even at that time, and I even took a time where I'm like, you know, I had some sort of rough outings, you know, and I'm like, maybe I'll just stop drinking because, you know, with all this going on, and just try pot's not as bad, whatever, and I, you know, I was already starting to do that, and then the progression kind of it accelerated, and got into harder. I started working in a restaurant and being a busboy, and I was hanging out with older people, and you know, so tried some harder drugs. And then when I was just before I turned, you know, my senior year, my mom saw how bad it was getting. I was getting in fights, and I got expelled, and I had no plan for college, and it was like she threw me in rehab. And before I could turn 18, and I spent my last 3 months of high school in a rehab, and then I started on this 25-year, you know, stint of like sobriety. Essentially, I was mostly sober from that point, you know, but in AA but I didn't know God, and so I got basically my last drink when I was 19, and I had after about 10 years I think I could smoke pot for about a 6-month period, but essentially since I was 19 I've been sober except sort of 6 months of experimenting.
But still kind of running, right?
Oh yeah, because I was always in my flesh. I figured, hey, I'm good. I don't drink. I don't do
Yeah.
drugs, and I pursued, you know,
But now you were
relationships. It was more about just selfish
Yeah.
relationships for me from there on.
and
out.
lots more self-indulgent. Like
surfing,
you went
yep.
to the endless summer phase.
Oh, I did.
Right?
I did it 1 year. Yeah, endless summer trip. Me and my buddy, a couple years after college, took a trip around the world, and
And I don't know if everybody knows what that means. Like you're explaining diversity, but endless summer, back in the day, surfers, that was like the dream, was just to have an endless summer surfing. So you traveled quite a bit around the world
Yeah.
on your surfing ventures, right?
Yeah, they did. On that trip, there's a movie, Endless Summer, and they went all
Yeah.
around the world, and there were some
Robert
major
August.
countries that. And me and my buddy did a trip starting through New Zealand and Australia and all through Indonesia. And then we split up, and I went all through Southeast Asia, and we met back up in South Africa, hit a couple islands in the Indian Ocean, and Reunion and Mauritius, and then wound up through, you know, Europe and even Israel. But yeah, in total of all those years spent, you know, surfing and just living for myself, I guess it was about 40 countries I made it to. You know, even after that one big trip, I just kept going places all the time. You know, El Salvador a
You
lot.
said in your bio or that you were funded by your trust fund.
My trust fund. Yeah,
Yeah.
my grandparents had been successful. They both grew up poor and worked hard and through the Depression, businesses and just diligence, perseverance, and had one child, my mom, and yeah. So when in the 70s, the way the estate planned, you split up your assets, and you know, half went to, you know, my mom, and then my grandfather left his half to my sister and I in the trust fund. So, you know, it's not like Rockefeller style, but it was enough to sort of have to manage
40
and,
countries.
and be and
Play.
have some, you know, play around, because I just had, you know, initially I was just living off the interest to fund the trip, and then later on, you know, I got in the investment world because I'm like, I better learn about investments so I can manage this and make the most of it. So, to some extent, that's been.
So that was Jonathan. Now,
Yeah.
now take us from when you were young and you came over here. How old were you when you actually came to America?
I think I was 9 by the
9.
time the whole trip, you know.
So
closed.
growing
So-
up in America had to be, tell us a little bit about that and bring us up to speed to the place where you and Jonathan came together there in Spring Lake that day.
Okay.
But we
No,
have
and-
to have the paw story.
We have to have the pop story. So,
Yeah.
let's start from the end, and then we'll work our way to the beginning. So, when we came to the United States, we were brought to the United States by a church. You had to be sponsored in order to gain entry to the United States. That was the quickest way to come into the United States. Otherwise, you had to wait you put your name in a lottery. So somehow, I don't know how, we were sponsored by a Cambodian sponsor who at the time lived in Massachusetts. It might have been through a church that sponsored us.
It was a Czechoslovakian refugee program. I have the document at home.
Oh,
He's a real historian. He has the
Primary
documents.
sources there, yeah.
And isn't that just so the Lord to do that? You know, I just
I
think
found
that's-
it in your files.
oh, okay.
He's going to take care of your family tree. I can
Thank
see
you.
it.
Okay, so we ended up not in Massachusetts, but in Lebanon County, Pennsylvania, where we were taken under the wings of a church, and it was called Calvary Church. It was called Calvary Church.
Okay.
So that I think this
The
is a
gospel
beautiful
church?
God story,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
that Calvary remains to be, the banner over me.
Exactly.
So we met Pa, and I called my sisters and I. Honey, you're gonna make me cry. Thank you. My sisters and I used to watch Little House on the Prairie a lot.
Sure.
And back then, it wasn't hard to find something edifying on television because everything we feel now in comparison was edifying. And my parents worked a lot. The comparison of my childhood isn't, I'm on the beach. I would be fortunate or blessed if I was able to allow to go to a friend's house. I wasn't allowed to have friends. That was their way of protecting me.
Yeah, I bet.
No friends. You go to school, you come back, you get an education, the end, So there was a lot of time spent at home. And my mom saw this opportunity for us to learn English, number one. Number two, to have someone keep an eye on us. And how do you do that? You hook yourself up with a church. Even without the presence of knowing how to speak English, she knew enough from somebody at work. She worked at work, and the man
The
said,
Hershey company. Sure.
yeah, Hershey Chocolate Factory. The man said, "Oh, do you have children? We can come pick them up and take them to Sunday school and what have you." And so that's how it started. We went to a church, but it wasn't Pa's church yet. So that's how we learned about Jesus and his love for us. And my sisters would sing songs about Jesus, but knew nothing about the Jesus we were singing about until we came to Calvary Church. And we met Pa through my parents learning how to drive, because Pa taught people how to drive.
Earl Hess. Was
Earl
his name.
Hess was
Just,
his name.
when you think about the practical ways to be able to share the gospel.
Now, he was an
Teaching him
older
how to-
guy, Pa.
And
He
he always
went-
kept a tract in his shirt pocket that said, "What's next?"
Yes.
Wow.
So he's always about sharing the gospel, like
Praise
not
the
part of
Lord.
the time.
Yeah,
Right.
all the
All-
time.
all the time.
So he went to this church. He went to Calvary Church.
Yeah, he was an elder at
okay.
Calvary Church,
All
and he
right.
would always
Lebanon.
invite my parents to church. And there was a period in time where we had a normal life, where my dad was going to church, my mom was going to church, the entire family was going to church. And we would be learning about Jesus. We would sing songs about Jesus. But at the time, it didn't mean anything to me because we didn't really know English, and we were just learning. We were praising the Lord. And I knew my mom, I knew the Holy Spirit touched her because she would be crying in church. She didn't understand the language, but the songs,
Power of the
the
Spirit of
power
God.
of the
Wow.
gospel going out
Trauma
just
they just
touched her.
experienced.
And I know that she felt something because I related this story to her recently, and I feel that God has caught her heart now. So Pa has a very significant role in how I came, how I, before I married Jonathan. The seed was planted a long time ago, and it was growing, but it wasn't flourishing. You know how you talk about the seeds and where it fell, and if it, the vines can choke it up, and it fell on a rock. So the seed was growing, and Pa he never gave up on me because he knew that I would be the one who would give my life to Christ. My brother, he was baptized, but he walked away, and my sisters, they were more traditional, falling in line with what mom and dad wanted them to do. Arranged marriages, and it didn't matter who, just as long as the gentleman was able and willing, and he came, meaning to make institutionalize the marriage, create a family, which is sound. I believe that you can grow to love the person that you're arranged with. It didn't matter if you loved them in the beginning. Love will grow because you're growing a family, you're growing a unit, which I still feel is productive if you were to look at marriage that way, versus the Prince Charming, I'm going to be rescued by the Prince Charming that I'm waiting for. Maybe that's what I was going after, and that's why it took me a lot longer to get married. And how old was I when we got married?
We were
I think it was
37 and 38.
Of course, man has his plans and God has his way.
Right.
But you thought you were.
I thought, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there was a lot of delay. And that part, I felt that if I would have known Christ a lot sooner in life, the roads wouldn't diverge so much. I was going on my path. I kept missing the mark. And so going back to Pa and how his role, really, if he was looking down from heaven, the day he died, he was asking for me.
Wow.
And where was I? I was busy at a store, working. That's all I ever did was work. But he knew. He knew that he did not labor in vain, that his work was not finished. And he asked for me in his hospital bed, and I didn't come.
You know how that ministers to me as well as how often have all of us said to ourselves, is our work in vain? Whoever God has placed before us, do we matter? Does our life have any influence at all? And fortunately, I have heard enough stories where many, 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 many prayers have been answered, but it was after that person got to go to heaven. And I think that's going to be one of the most exciting things, not the most exciting, but it's such an exciting part of heaven, is getting to see, you came, and God does hear our prayers, and those seeds that are planted do matter. And God's providential hand putting all of those, you came from a country that you would have, the people were bowing down to Buddha, and he loved you so much, God loved you so much that he brought you to a place where you would know about Jesus. Mm-hmm. And I love, Bill has a kind of a keeper, just always thinking about the beauty out of ashes. Mm-hmm. And it's always about Jesus. When you can see Jesus in situations, it's such a glorious thing. So he'll get to he's heard, well done, good and faithful servant.
Well, that's a touching story, in that in case you didn't pick up on this or not, Pa is not her dad. I mean, he's the spiritual guy that God put into her life, mm-hmm. to lead her to Christ and plant the seeds. Mm-hmm. And it should be an encouragement to us, as Candace just said. We're seed planters, right?
Whether you're teaching somebody to drive a car, think of that, or English for a language, or a neighbor, or bringing. That's one of the things for me. Sunday school is really important to me for the same reason. We had a June Sorrell lived in our neighborhood, and she had a station wagon, and she would bring the children to Sunday school. And so my little season of hearing about Jesus as a child was because of a woman in the neighborhood who brought me to Sunday school. Yeah. And we all have those opportunities to be an influence in our neighborhood, in our communities.
And as you're telling the story and tearing up about, basically you're saying I was too busy working to come and see him in his hospital bed. I would say that, I mean, part of what you were trained to do is work, right?
Yes.
That was a virtue. If I'm, working hard,
Yes.
and so you were doing that, and I sensed that you now, if you could turn back time, you would have gone or whatever. But the thing I think that the hope that we hold on to is that someday you'll get to see him again, and you'll be able to, and he'll be able to understand. This is the thing. What's come from all this, and I'm skipping ahead a little bit, is a godly family. No perfection here. None of us are that way, but a godly family now. That God has done this miraculous work, and that's why we're here today. Just to give a little background about this, but we've gotten to see you guys grow over the last 8 years or so. And by the way, I knew I'd get to this sooner or later. They are going to be moving back to Pennsylvania. They're going to be leaving the Jersey Shore here and
'Cause
going
their
back
story
to
continues.
Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
So it's a good thing that we sat down to do this. We had it planned, I think, before maybe we even knew that. But
Yep.
God's bringing you back, in a sense, back to Pennsylvania. He's moving you on, but he's done this work in the last 8 years of preparation. And we really believe, as much as it pains our hearts, that we're sending out our best.
We know that God has more story. And just to be a part of your journey has been a blessing. And I want to dial into that fact. As a child, she heard about Jesus. She had those seeds planted, and then she did what you do. So you were in survival mode, and this is where you're going. And after that sweet time on the beach, then reality hit. You're married. there's a
2 years
there's
later,
a
yeah.
there's
2
a
years later, you got married.
there's
we did
there's
long
a
distance for a couple of years.
there's a marriage after every wedding.
That's right.
And when you moved back to the Jersey Shore, then you may have learned a little bit about Jesus then, but clearly he still wasn't in either one of your lives as far as leading your life. And when you moved to New Jersey, like you said in the beginning, you started coming to Calvary Chapel Coastlands, and we had a marriage retreat. And the Wolves came, Michelle and
Oh,
Bob.
I remember that.
Yeah.
Sure.
And that is when,
It all happened, yeah. Well, we were in trouble. I mean, we were married only a few months, and I was yet unsaved. I was attempting to be a devout Buddhist. I had through my experiences with AA, realized that you need to have some spiritual connection,
Higher power.
and the higher power, and that's what I chose. And that was I still had the same problems, right? I had no victory whatsoever. Because when you don't identify sin as sin, I don't believe there's hope. And then that marriage retreat was the moment when we had been under your teaching for about 90 days, I believe, at that time. And prior to coming to here, when I was out in Pennsylvania, we would go to Calvary Chapel in Lebanon.
oh yeah,
And so I had heard the message there as well,
Right.
because we were looking for Calvary Church, and we found Calvary Chapel.
Right. Gotcha.
And I had heard, so I didn't, so
That's in Pennsylvania
So
you're
I was
talking about, right?
open when she said, God spoke to Savani's heart, that prior to us being married, go to church.
yeah. Just that
And-
knowing you need to be in church now, right?
Because and so when we came here, we looked at a couple other churches, and we felt the love here right away, and that married couples retreat was powerful, and we were having some issues, and then you did an altar call the Sunday after that married couples church retreat, and I was like 80-20, and I was getting closer and closer as I was hearing the gospel go out here, and just feeling the love in this place, and with you both, and it was just I said, I'm going all in with the Lord. I just walked forward, and I let go of everything. I said, Lord, just take it, and He's been so faithful. I mean, and that was it. The power that I was so unburdened, and I had power which I never had before to overcome things that I thought I would, die with.
Wow.
And now, fast forward a little bit. Jonathan is teaching the youth here. He's been on the board here. He's
raising
back
two
from-
precious children.
Yes, I was going to get to that
Oh,
part.
sorry.
That's all right. That's okay. You're right. That's more important than the
excited.
stuff he's doing. No, you're right. And so he just had conducted a surf camp with the kids. So God's even
Or
using the
camp,
things
yeah.
that that you were doing in the world. He's using them to
Minister to the
minister
kids.
to others,
Yeah.
and of course. And I don't want to understate this, is the two miracle children that you
Yeah.
have.
And
that God has
we've
given
prayed
you.
through seasons with you all. While you gave your life to Christ, the reality of surrendered life had to be somewhere in that area, right?
Yes.
So while you introduced to Jesus when you were little, now tell us about what happened with you then at that time.
Okay. So I accepted Jesus into my life, and I do remember accepting him into my life at the age of 9, and I prayed the prayer to accept him with Pa, and I do remember the warmth of the sun. Even on a humid day, there was this soft wind blowing in through the windows that were open, and it was just very warm. But there was like a nice breeze, and I had to ask my sisters, did you guys feel that, or did I make that up? And I asked them after I surrendered my life and made Jesus the Lord of my life, and they said yes, they remembered. And I said, okay, so it was the Lord, it was his spirit, I'm not making this up. And they said that yes, they remembered that. And I was like, okay, great. So I think it's important for all of us to remember that even though we pray to receive Jesus, unless we commit ourselves to him and make him Lord of our life, it is truly in vain, because we really we're not all in, and we don't know all that he has for us unless we put everything down and does it his way.
Yeah.
I'm very emotional right now.
Well, encountering God is an emotional thing. I mean, I don't take that lightly. I mean, there's a depth to when you encounter the living God, and he allowed you to carry on with your life, and then in your both brokenness, like you said, well, this was beautiful, and then we got married, and then there's a marriage, and on that break, that reality that it's not enough. You needed God, and Buddha didn't help, and your careers didn't help, and your finances didn't help. And one of the things that's been really humbling for Bill and I, as we've watched you grow in the Lord with us, as we've grown in the Lord, is that you can give your life over to the Lord, and then it's still there's a time to get right thinking. You know, in Romans 12, when he says to give yourself over to the Lord and then renew your mind. And so together, I mean, we've had a few phone calls, and where, you know, like you said, how do you do this? How do you work through this? I don't want to work through this. What does that mean? Or what does he say? And it's always been a blessing to us whenever you've called, and we've been able to say, well, let's see what Jesus says, you know, and that no matter how hard that seemed, to right your mind with it, you were always willing to do what Jesus said, and then to watch the breakthrough and watch him restore. And like you said, without repentance, there is no restoration. But that doesn't just stop with the full surrender. That's the dailies in our life. And it's been really a beautiful thing to see what God has shaped in you two as a couple. You've been a testimony.
So, out of diversity comes adversity, and so it hasn't been an easy road, or has. Don't let me put words in your mouth. I'm married, so I know to my opposite, just about.
Well, I don't think marriage in general is not easy, but when you add an element of diversity, it makes it even more challenging, complicated. And in the midst of it all, I wish that I had humor because it would have lightened everything up a lot
There you go,
more.
Jonathan.
And
How do you say that?
to Jonathan's credit, I mean, marriage is funny, isn't it? There's so many laughing moments that I could just, just throw my hands up and laugh. But I didn't want to encourage Jonathan. He will
I don't need any.
find a funny in everything, and then I would have lost my moment because I'm such a serious person.
Yes.
But marriage in a diverse marriage, there's a lot of challenges that, again, I feel the Lord took care of it. So He used Jonathan's appetite for traveling around the world to ready him to be married to somebody out of his ethnic.
Just culture.
Cultural, because
very
he
open to different cultures.
Right.
Very
You
experienced.
were
with different
also
cultures,
not
so
even
no
just the
problem.
openness, the ability to see through those lenses
Yeah.
when you've experienced cultures too.
Right.
Yeah.
because when it came down to food is a very important cross-cultural obstacle. If he didn't like my cooking and he didn't like the way I cooked or ate,
If he didn't.
if
say.
he didn't,
Right.
there's a challenge right
That would have
there.
been tough, yeah. And Cambodian food is amazing, but if you're not used to different types of styles of food eating, you're not open to it. Yeah,
Yeah.
it wouldn't have been a natural fit. But
Right.
I was like, this is awesome. I loved it. I
So,
still do.
So what would you say then? God has stepped in. He clearly has plucked you out of the fire. We can see the dots connected so well, and that life began to breathe into this death when Christ stepped in and you gave him permission.
Yeah.
And I think of Isaiah 30:18 that says, I have been just waiting for you to wait on me, that I might do good and gracious things for you. And so you've turned your life over. And now as a couple, what are some of the things that you have been intentional about doing to build a foundation that's on him now, on the rock? Your prayers, your devos. What does it look like in the Woolly home?
I mean, really, with you under your discipleship of you both, we couldn't be more blessed to have such loving, spiritual parents as you, and to be taught, and everybody here, and especially when we were young Christians, the follow up, the care that was taken to grow us and direct us and bring us in. It's just amazing, God's hand. But the way that we have always been committed to, and what we were taught, is to pray together always, right? And that is without praying together. We've gone through seasons where we didn't do it, and it's talk about trouble, talk about hard times, talk about hopelessness, right? But when we pray together, and we do it always now, that we can always have hope. He restores us, and he breaks down our walls, because we are so different. She's so practical. Not so practical. She's so careful, and and I'm more of a risk taker, and it's just all those things. But he uses those things, and then he brings us together. His with prayer and just being in the Word, encouraging each other. She wants me to lead more than I do, and has encouraged me, and it's taken me a long time to really take hold of the role that God's given me, and as a father, because she never had in the childhood. This girl never had a toy in her life. The first, never had a toy, growing up. So so there was no childhood. It was a big instant adulthood, and so she, really responsible, really disciplined, and I was, self-inflicted wounds and hedonistic, and it's just he can shape us, but just being in the Word and just deciding to be involved, deciding to get involved, and that was always big. Our thing with Thursday nights, right? We we say with
Yeah.
kids, it's
We
tough to
love
get
that.
there.
Right.
Yeah.
You go one Thursday, I go the next Thursday.
Yeah.
So like we're
Right.
midweek,
That's-
but it's like,
yeah.
and we share the word that came out with each other, and so those.
And we appreciate that you watch the kids so that Savani can come to women's study. You never miss a men's study. You've really gotten that full picture that God has is the in the prayer but praying together, just being the family of God and the strength of the family of God, and then serving. You know, that giving back out to the Lord. It's just part of how he moves and grows us. It's been
We're just
beautiful to
so
watch.
Grateful for what he's done in our lives, and just so grateful to him for it all.
So one of the things that we see happening right as I look at you for the last 8 years, we see the miraculous hand of God who can take two diverse people on, let's say, opposite ends of the spectrum, and what he's doing by that is the two shall become one, right? The two are becoming one practically,
Yes.
right? And so because what happened, what it really was, and this is what's happened to us. I'm not saying we've arrived by it. I'm talking about our marriage now, is that two people that weren't where God needed them to be or wanted them to be, they need to come maybe towards the middle. You know what I'm saying?
Complete.
And so God's completing them by bringing, it's not one way or the other, it's to the middle. And I see that certainly in my life. I needed to be a little more disciplined, and maybe you need to be a little less disciplined, if I can say it that way.
We're probably a lot
But-
alike with our temperaments.
But so I see that, and I see God doing that. It's he's just really good at this,
Yeah. He's shaping
And
something
the
very
pain,
beautiful.
as someone once said, the pain's in the resistance.
Yeah.
When you try to hold on, no, I don't want. It's that can be painful.
Yes, it
Right.
is. But going back to your question, I just wanted to touch that. This is an encouragement to even mature believers out there where you're going through a season where you have, your first child. And if you were really involved in the church and you decide that, I'm too busy to serve in the church or even go for the messages, I would highly encourage that you just, do all that you can to stay connected to the body, because it's in the connection that, especially as new mothers, we can be wrapped up in depression or just really removed or overwhelmed. So deciding that Jesus is all that you need and what that looks like is very important. And that's why Jonathan and I decided that one of us needs to go to church, because if we are moving towards
Midweek.
that oneness,
Yeah, the midweek.
somebody has to be fed. Somebody still needs to carry on when the other person is recovering, from childbirth or from a very long night of feeding the babies. Somebody has to maintain the normalcy so that when the other person is ready, you're not playing catch up because the other person was down. So I felt that kept us going, and we were able to bounce back a lot quicker had we just give the enemy a foothold and say, well, you're busy now, and you have a baby, and you have sleepless nights, and you have to work, and you this, and you that. No, you cannot have that. Get behind me, Satan.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
why we decided that we have to stay in the Word, because I'm not going to read the Word on my own. And if I come here, I'll have scriptures to look up. I can be fed. It's tiring. I don't want to come. I'll be honest.
As a
Sometimes
mom, yeah.
I'm like, gosh, it's Thursday already?
Yeah.
Gosh, why can't Thursdays take a lot longer? Gosh, it's Sunday already?
Yeah.
So, but, coming here, once you get here,
Oh, you're never sorry, right?
yeah, thank goodness.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
Spirit
just
is
an
willing, the
encouragement.
flesh is weak.
Yeah.
But being intentional. And I think you said really a key to life is that vital relationship with Jesus.
Yes.
And he created us for community, to commune with him and to commune with one another. And that's been one of the things that Bill's really had strongly on his heart is in Hebrews, where it says, do not forsake the assembling, as some do. And you can always rationalize. I can't tell you how many times I've come to church exhausted, but we can hardly get to sleep after we've been here because it's like, and did you see what the Lord did here? And and that was a great word. And there's this synergy that comes with that connecting with one another, connecting to the Lord. And it gives you fodder to feed off of. Well, you have littler times when you're new mommies, right?
Yes.
So we should have. We're
haven't
gonna have
talked
to
a lot about the children.
I know.
A little bit. You're just starting to touch on it now. They have 2 children.
Yes, and we're gonna have to have
both
part
miracles.
2. Yes, they've
I
been
guess all
both.
children are miracles, but
But not only are
they
they
had
miracles,
children later in life,
Yes.
right?
40s,
And yeah, and
so their
and-
birth was a miracle as well.
Yeah.
Because Savani was in a lot of danger with her health when the delivery time came. But
Yeah, you guys are
coming
awesome
to it.
testimony
Yeah.
and encouragement, and just to watch. I know you probably don't see it that way because when you're in the midst of it, you're becoming part of iron sharpening iron and iron, and you're and 8 years of diversity,
and that number means new beginning.
and you've been to Diversity University is what it is. That's what marriage is, right? That's what it is.
And you've got your adversity, but it's creating unity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's the Lord's part, right?
Yes,
in,
it
in the
is.
midst. So,
You've kept him the center, and that's why he gets his
so,
glory.
but I do want to hear, up to speed, fast forward to today. Just, and we don't have a lot of time left, but I just want to hear. Give me both of your takes on where things are today. How are you guys doing today? I don't mean today, but
Yeah,
just
yeah. Well, we've had our times where we've really sharpened each other, and I think we've established a pattern of being in the Word together and having a routine in the home, and just knowing what our roles are and how to support each other better. We have our difficulties still, but we had some definitely really hard times in the first 7 years, and I think the Lord has been so faithful that Olivia and Kai are such a blessing. I mean, Olivia's going to be 6 now, and Kai's
Crazy.
4.
Yeah.
And we just it's just incredible what he's done through it all. And so I hope I've improved some from early on, and we definitely have so many blessings that we count all the time. We really do. So.
The one word that it comes to mind is that marriage has, and he is glorified, not my testimony, not nothing that we have or who we are can ever flourish without him, not ever in our own strength. So he's definitely, and still I'm not humble. So he's taken a lot of haughtiness out of me. And because that's my culture. It is my culture. And I give glory to God for that, because haughtiness is not a pretty thing to look at in the mirror.
So that's also a testimony that marriage is a gift. Now I guess everybody knows why we could just put this banner called God's Providence over them, right? And it's definitely a grace story. And
yes.
Right.
Thank you so much for coming in
Oh,
and
we're
sharing your
so
hearts.
grateful.
I know that people are going to be blessed and encouraged by this, because we were.
Mm-hmm.
So let's pray. Lord, we just want to thank you again for the gift of marriage.
Thank you, Jesus.
And for the Woolleys, as they've just been open, Lord, and to share their story, some of their story. And they are diverse. But Lord, you brought them together, and you're doing a work in them. And we are sending them out, Lord. The work's going to continue until that day of Christ Jesus. And so we just pray a special blessing over them,
Yes.
and marriage. In Jesus' name, amen.
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 If you have been encouraged by this podcast, please share with a friend. You can contact us at office@cccoastlands.org. That's office@cccoastlands.org. The music on our podcast is called Anchor Deep by Scott Cunningham, worship leader at Calvary Chapel Costa Mesa School of Worship. God bless you.